The US Special Envoy Steve Witkoff and the US Ambassador to Israel, Mike Huckabee, have inspected a food distribution centre in Gaza today in their first visit to the area. This comes after the UN warned that famine conditions are tightening their grip, in their words, on the Gaza Strip, with an increase in malnutrition-related deaths. Joining me now is Nada Al-Hadithi, a UK doctor who's just returned from Gaza. Nada, appreciate you joining us. We'll go to your experience in Gaza in a second, but now you're back and reflected on it. What has it made you think about?
Just makes me feel that we need to have a ceasefire now. We need to get humanitarian in now. Should have done it months ago. This situation is absolutely desperate, and a school classroom of children are dying every single day.
When you were there, did you see the increase in malnutrition before your eyes?
Yes, absolutely. From the first week I was there until the end, 3 weeks later, it was a tangible difference in the amount of starvation and the emaciation of our patients. Even the severity and relentlessness of the bombings was worse. I mean, it was mass casualty after mass casualty, with people being blown up in their tents, which were meant to be in green zones. The situation was catastrophic.
And some of those people who were shot at by drones in their tents were some of your own colleagues as well. One in particular, a father and his children were killed. Tell us more about that.
So Ahmed Salah was the most patient, joyful, hardworking man I've worked with, and he always had a smile for us. He was always concerned about us, and we were like, we're here to help. He's like, are you okay? He was dedicated community service, and he was a really skilled practitioner in theatres as a scrub nurse. And he was followed home one day, and this is eyewitness testimony from other healthcare workers in the hospital, by a quadcopter drone. And it didn't kill him on the route where he was on his own. It waited until he was in his tent and greeted his 3 children and killed all of them. And their bodies were brought to the hospital. And it's a real loss. This isn't just one case. His case is devastating to me because he was my friend. But actually, more than 1,500 healthcare workers, according to the UN, now have been killed. And in Nasser Hospital alone, more than 10 scrub nurses have been killed. And this has direct impact on the quality of care we can give our patients. And if you just step outside even more, the staff members themselves are starving, their family members are being killed, and yet they're still coming to work. Never before have I seen such dignified, committed people.
We heard from doctors in recent days, also working in Gaza, urging Steve Witkoff and Mike Huckabee to visit the hospitals to see for themselves what is, in their words, really going on, and not the aid distribution centres. Did you yourself, obviously you saw what was going on in the hospitals, did you yourself see what was going on outside at all? Did you see those aid distribution centres? Did you see the rushes to get that food that people so desperately need?
So I didn't go to any of the aid distribution centres, but my colleagues did, because they were absolutely desperate and their children were starving. And at any point where they heard that there was a food drop, there'd be, panic amongst the people of, are we going to be able to get there? Are we going to be able to get food? One of the main topics of conversation every day was how much was a bag of flour. And in Nasser Hospital, a lot of staff weren't being paid, so they would do these additional shifts in the EMT hospitals where they would get 200 shekels for the day. And a bag of flour, 1 kilogram bag of flour, which isn't enough to feed a family of 5, would cost between 150 and 250 shekels.
Yeah. Where are they buying it from? Because there is this accusation, isn't there, from Israel, the Israeli government, that the food is being taken by those who are then selling it at exorbitant prices on the black market. Is that what people are having to resort to? I mean, if they're desperate, they're going to try and get it from wherever they can. Is that what was happening?
Look, I'm not a politician. I'm here as a humanitarian. And what I saw were emaciated children. The crucial point is that before the war, there was about 500 trucks of aid coming into Gaza every day. And remember, Israel has complete control over every entry and border into Gaza. And so they were allowing about 500 trucks a day. And since then, and you can look at the UN figures, it's been less than 10%.
Yeah.
And this is a decimated population who have had more than 6 Hiroshimas dropped on them. This is a land that is about a quarter the size of London. The entire strip of Gaza is a quarter the size of London, and they've been moved into 14% of that land because 86% has been called an evacuation zone, and they've been actively bombing those areas. So now you've got 2 million starving people in the same size as Exeter, which in our country, in our census in 2021, had 130,000 people in it. That's 2 million people with no water, no sanitation, no food, no medical supplies. On the 22nd of July, when I left, Israel army bombed the WHO medical warehouse. And there were people on my convoy with me that were still shaking, that literally were lucky to escape with their lives. And these were international volunteers. They were told to evacuate at 4 o'clock, and the big tanks came rolling through the compound gates at 11 a.m., shooting at will. And there's no accountability. All you have is our testimony, because journalists, as you know, aren't allowed in.
We certainly do know that, yes. There have been embeds, of course, but very carefully controlled by the Israeli authorities. I think it's also fair to say there is that border with Egypt, which is also sealed shut, and no aid can cross that either. Appreciate you're not a politician, you're a doctor, humanitarian trying to do work on the ground, but when there are people around you talking about this kind of thing, this desperation, what kind of thing are they saying? What are they saying about the lack of aid, the control that's being exerted?
The Gazan people are the most community-minded and supportive people I've ever met in my life. I had patients sacrifice their own medical equipment and food to give to children on my ward under my care. And despite the situation where they feel that the world has completely abandoned them, they are still coming into work, dignified and doing their best for their communities every single day. So yeah, there's a huge amount of stress and strife. There's a huge amount of pain because people are losing their family members, their loved ones. I had a patient who was 21 years old. She was 6 months pregnant. She was blown up in her tent. Her husband was killed. She lost her eye. She had an open fracture, and both her legs were completely destroyed from the bomb blast. And she was pregnant. When I was pregnant, my husband wouldn't let me be in any state where I could be harmed in any way. And this woman is completely emaciated with no vitamins, no food. And one day her baby stopped moving.
Nada, can I ask, do they talk about the control that Hamas has exerted over the Gaza Strip at all?
I had no witness of anything to do with Hamas. I was allowed completely free reign around the hospital because there were originally 17 ICU beds in Nasser Hospital and it had to be extended to 98, where literally outpatient cardiology waiting rooms were turned into wards. I was frequently wandering around the hospital looking for patients because there's not usually any plastic surgeons in Gaza. So whenever international medical teams come on board, we need to actually find the patients that could do with our help. And
Yes.
so I wandered around and never saw any sign of anything like that.
Final question. Are you going to go back?
I would like to go back, but the Israeli government stop about 50% of applicants who get approval from the UN and the WHO. So there's a real risk that they won't let me back in, but I would be very keen to go back and support my patients and my friends.
Nada Al-Hadithi, appreciate you joining us today on Sky News. Thank you.